I just want to talk a little bit today about developing high performing teams and just talking about leadership and what sometimes it takes to become a great leader. I know anyone who is in leadership, not every day you're getting up and you're smiling and, bouncing off the wall, but it is important to maintain a high level of energy on your team. One thing that I've learned, and I'm not too old, but I've learned during my years of leadership or just managing people that, it does take a different kind of mindset to really lead a high performance team or a highly successful team. And what you probably want to do, I'll give a few steps, is that as you are leading your team, it becomes very important for you to assess your team to see where you are in the process. Are you building a team and where are you in the building process? You also want to make sure that you carefully examine each talent, right, that you have within the team and each person, how do they prefer to work, their styles, and where do they do best and how as a manager or a leader of people you leverage that. When creating the team, you also want to see what phase in that map you are, because there are various stages in creating and sustaining a team. For example, if you're in the orientation process, this is a place where people are not too sure of themselves. Everyone on the team, you're recruiting, you are building the team, and people really, the ones that you have in place, they're not too sure who is coming on board and who the persons that you're bringing on, what their roles will be. So there is some amount of fear that you will experience in this process, both on the leadership side and on the new hire side. And this does not limit. It's not limited to just for example, the secular world, but also in churches. From time to time, churches are probably never normally just at any one place on the team, because you always, when you get to probably sustaining, then you find that you're back at creating, because new people join, people leave, and that sort of a thing. One thing as a leader that I would love to encourage other leaders to do is that you're always training leaders to succeed other leaders. So who is my next assistant manager? Who is my next assistant pastor? Who is my next person? My next ushers, next choir director. You just cannot have one person in any one role and not be planning effectively for the replacement of that person. This can be done in a very cohesive way where persons are, if you, example, find out that persons are insecure on your team, you're leading a set of insecure people, because that sometimes happen. They're not too sure, and that sometimes it's because of the leaders and who are leading. You see that people are insecure and you don't train to get out of that mold. So in creating your team, you are to assess different persons and see exactly where they are. How do they deal with someone that is high performing versus someone that just will get the job done and nothing extra, nothing more. You also need those persons on the team, because sometimes they tend to be more focused than the ones that who are high performing and who can do 10 different things and be successful at those 10 different things. You also want to create an environment that is inclusive. For example, black, white, different talents. You want to encourage that environment. If you are a leader and you find yourself that you only can work well with one set of persons, that probably is very well the case. But as you as a leader assess yourself with a mentor, you also want to make sure that you're working on that, because you're, as a leader, you're not sure if you're going to have 5,000 people or you're just going to be leading 10 people or 5 persons. However many persons you have to lead, you want to ensure that in doing this, that you are an effective leader and you encourage a culture of inclusiveness, right? For example, you are the leader at work. What do you do when your employees come into work? Do you greet them? Do you Do you call them? Do you build a relationship with them? You, as a leader, it doesn't matter how big you get, you always have to find time for people. You always have to touch people. And for example, you always have to kind of keep like however you're going to keep a reminder file to remind you of the last persons that you touch, because everyone needs to be touched within your group, right? You can't touch half and not touch half because you're not being effective. You can't touch quarter and not touch three quarter. At some point within the month or within the week, you have to have a way of touching people, right? For example, if you're leading a very large organization, you still want, no matter how large your organization gets, you still want to be able to touch people and make people feel like they are a part. You cannot be afraid of high performing individuals. They are given to you to lead, right? So, for example, a manager will, or a leader of person will suddenly get insecure when you have someone that is high energy, likable, outgoing, big personality. You have those persons on your team. How are you going to lead them so that they keep motivated and they are true to themselves? As leaders, we don't want to recreate people. God does all the recreation or the recreating. What you want to do is that you want to encourage wherever you see strength, you want to encourage it. You probably want to create borders around certain energies, right? Because sometimes energies can be scattered and talents can be scattered. So as a leader, how am I going to embrace someone that comes into the group and they are high energy? They're just bouncing off the wall every day. Probably that's exactly how they are. And what is my team lacking? Do they lack drive? How can I use this person in an effective way to ensure that their engagement too is being developed, right? You can use such a person. Such a person can be very effective. Low energy persons, they can be very effective on the team. They can create a balance with the high energy person, right? But what you don't want to do as a leader is that you're leading and there is no room for certain persons. You want to encourage diversity, the way how people think, what part of the world they're from, their different ages. You want to make sure that you are embracing people. You don't want to be labeled as a leader that only can work with one type of people, because leaders have to be diverse. If you find out that you're a leader and, for example, you are lacking in this area, it's a good place to start with your mentor. You know, what are some of the things that I can do? And if you're afraid to take it to your mentor, put it in Google. What can I do to embrace different dynamics on my team, right? You might find books that you can read. You might find leaders out there that are challenged with the same situations and they can give tips. You probably want to make fun out of it, right? I'm very low key, but I have high energy person, or I'm very high energy, but I have people who are very low key. How do we work together? You want to also have meetings, right? Outside of forming the team, you want to make sure that communication is open. You want to foster an environment that people knows the vision. They know where they are in implementing the vision. They know what's expected of them, and they can carry that function through with limited touch or limited interference or limited supervision. You want to also encourage persons with super talents on the group. You don't want them to feel like, oh, they're an outcast, because then you won't be effective as a leader right across the board. And leaders too, they have to develop themselves. They too need mentors and they too need to learn. I'm not saying that I've learned all of it right across the board, but what I do know is that I have had the privilege to lead not only in church, but lead in the world, lead within organization, leads in Jamaica, lead in America. And it does add a little credibility to my speaking about different roles and different expectations from a leader, right? I have been exposed to leadership from about an age of 10, and probably even earlier than that, because I have been leading within my home. The first of 4 girls